All right, I trust everyone's here to learn about how their code will be broken in the future. And a little background about myself. If you're wondering why I'm talking about this subject, I did write one of the 2 papers for removal of auto pointer. So it was not the paper that was adopted. You can blame me if you want. I'm no problem with that. So far at this conference, I've heard a few different talks that has content related to this talk. And if you saw Alistair Meredith's first presentation, he covered a number of the topics that you will see here as well. I did run here, so give me a moment, please. All right, so this is not a horror story. I know a lot of people say, you've broken my code, why did you do that? You've cost me money, I've got certification processes that I have to go through. All right, sure. I'm very well aware of that. In producing flight simulation software, we go through a variety of agencies in order to say that we have a simulator that meets the needs of the community. We also have very long support windows. So for everyone that says, you broke my code, there's also a few people that say, why aren't you doing more? This particular post popped up on Reddit not long after this talk was accepted. You should name it. They're not here, are they? No. Okay. So, as a PhD student, I get to read a lot of things. And this particular paragraph popped up in one of my readings. I want to assure you, we are not deprecating exceptions. And we have no plans to, as far as I know, at this time, deprecate exceptions. So this paper had a little flaw. Now then, Annex D. For those that don't know, Annex D lists all of the deprecated clauses in the standard. I've specifically chosen Chicago as a starting point because that was my first meeting. It was also a ballot comment resolution meeting. Now, in November, we'll be down the highway here in Issaquah talking about comments for C++ 17. N3733 lists all the comments for C++ 14 dealing with deprecation and other things. We're going to look at 4 of them. Great Britain 9 said, let's get rid of gets. It's bad. You can get buffer overflows. We have other facilities within C++ that allow us to do the same thing that gets does and not use gets. So we said, sure, we'll add this little comment to the standard that says gets is no longer a part of C++. US 21. I see Walter in the audience over here. He's talking on Thursday about the random header. We're not going to cover rand, are we, Walter? One slide, okay. So for C++ 14, there were comments saying we should go ahead and look at Walter's papers from prior to the C++ 14 committee draft. And they said, we want to deprecate a lot of things. Now, in review of this, we said, we already have this discouragement in the standard. Rand shouldn't be used. Maybe we could really deprecate it. But in reality, we couldn't do that. We said, yeah, random shuffle, sure, that's fine. We'll get rid of it. But rand, yeah, we'll just add a few more words here that say, don't use it, really don't use it. So that's what we got. StirStream. Anybody use StirStream? One user, 1.5, a few users. Okay, so Swiss 9 said, let's get rid of StirStream. Unfortunately, we had no replacement for StirStream. So even though it was deprecated in C++ 98, we really couldn't do anything in the C++ 14 timeframe. Now, we'll come back to this in a little bit and maybe have some solutions for this, maybe not. Async. Async was quite controversial. There were plenty of opinions on both sides. Should we get rid of it? Should we keep it? We had papers from Herb saying, if you want to go one way, here's some wording. If you want to go another way, here's some wording. Nico said deprecation would be really bad. And in the end, we said, sure, we'll keep it. We'll apply some additional wording for the destructor of future, and we'll keep async. So those were the 4 comments related to deprecation for C++ 14. Now, after Chicago, we went to Issaquah and Rapperswil. And the working draft looked like this going into Urbana. We added the 1 section on random shuffle, a few hundred words, not bad. Before getting to Urbana, we had this thing called CppCon 2014. At the grill of the committee, the question was asked, what would you like to see removed? And Howard Hinnett said, auto pointer. Personally, I had some vacation right after CppCon, so I said, sure, I can write that paper, not knowing that Stefan was going to write one as well. One more comment on this. In the 2 years since this particular meeting and that particular grill committee, there has not been another request of the committee to know what features they might like to see removed. You might ask at some point. Okay, so we got to Urbana. Before looking at some of the library items, we had this paper from Richard who said, let's get rid of trigraphs. We can do it without breaking compatibility. Everybody will be happy, except IBM. And so IBM gave us this response in 4120 that said, yes, Clang, yes, GCC, yes, Visual C++, in their default modes, don't care about trigraphs. So if you were using any of those compilers, you probably absolutely knew nothing about trigraphs. And in the end, IBM said, sure, we can get rid of trigraphs. We can move the standard forward. Everything is great. Trigraphs gone. So this is a talk about adding and, deprecating and removing things. However, we're adding something here. In this particular case, it was known since 1998 that uncaught exception had a problem. If we had code in a stack unwinding during a destructor, there was no way of knowing whether or not an exception was because of the current code or some other code. So we changed to uncaught exceptions, give you the number of uncaught exceptions that are in flight, and deprecated the singular. Function objects. Of all of the items listed in this talk, unary function and binary function are probably the 2 features that affected my code base the most. And that was about 3 instances. So I'm sure there are more users of it than those 3. Interestingly enough, this paper was looked at in November 2014. And in July, coming out of Ulu, Boost noticed that they still had a usage. All right, bind first, bind second. You can use bind instead, pretty easy. Auto pointer. At the time of this paper, you could use Clang Modernize and it would tell you, hey, use unique pointer instead. Since that time, Clang Tidy has actually replaced Clang Modernize. There are checkers that say the same thing. If you're using auto pointer, you should be using unique pointer. There's a history there. As you can see, we actually deprecated this in 2005. It appeared in the C++ 11 standard 6+ years later. So there should have been plenty of notice that auto pointer shouldn't be used. Stefan continued to say we should get rid of random shuffle, even though it was only a year before that we actually deprecated it. And you can see the justification there. Basically, we don't want you using rand. Here's an algorithm that could use rand. Let's get rid of it. All right. In the end, we said, yes, everything in 4190 should go. And at plenary in Urbana, we all rejoiced that we had removed all of this garbage, I think, as Alistair puts it. So after Urbana, we had a meeting in Cologne for the library group. We had a meeting in Lenexa. And then we went to Kona. So you can see, we chopped out 1,700 words in several sections from Annex D going into Kona. But we weren't done. Alistair looked at what we had in the standard and said, there's more that we can do. The register keyword, not really used by the compiler. If you have C code that you're actually compiling as C++, all right, you might get a warning in a C++ 17 compiler, but your actual code shouldn't change. Next one, operator plus plus for bool. We don't have operator minus minus. Operator plus plus makes false into true and true into true. Yeah, not really needed, not really useful. Gone. What's the next one? Deprecate iostreams. Anybody happen to use any of these? Yeah. Alistair says probably less usage than auto pointer. We can get rid of that one too. Not fun. Here we are adding another feature. So there was plenty of usage of not fun from Boost. By adding it, we could deprecate unary negate, binary negate, not one, not two, and those were the last of the components that still used embedded typedefs. So lots of things going into deprecated at this point. All right, adaptable function typedefs. This one, when we first started discussing it, was, yeah, sure, we can remove these completely. And then somebody said, what about hash? What about function? Rethought it. Yeah, maybe we need to keep those. Thought about it some more. No, we can get rid of it from hash. There was still a lot of concern that if we just removed all of these, that there would be problems. So in the end, we said, all right, we'll deprecate it. We won't remove it. It'll still be there. We can figure out at some future point what we should do with these. There's our friends, the zombies, back. For those really concerned with breakage of code, Stefan came up with this wording that says, these names have been in previous standards. We're going to reserve the use for the standard. Compilers can continue to ship versions of their libraries that have these symbols in their library. Your code could still work. The compiler would still be compliant to the standard. Everybody's happy. And we get cool names in the standard too. Standard iterator. Really don't know what to say about standard iterator other than if you looked at its signature, you'll see lots of voids and no idea what should go where. Good candidate for deprecation. Allocator members. There was a recent Stack Overflow posting on this saying, why in the world are we deprecating these things? From the standard point of view, we really want you to use the allocator traits as opposed to the member functions of standard allocator. Is literal. Doesn't do much as far as usefulness. Temporary buffer APIs. This one, SG14, had a little concern about. By definition, it looked like you might be able to gain some performance using them because there might be stack allocations instead of heap allocations. An analysis of the implementations in the libraries, though, said, no, everybody's pretty much just using new. So it could go to raw storage allocators. In Alistair's analysis, it was added 20 years ago. Nobody's done anything as far as completing it since. Get rid of it as well. So 4190, P0174, two big papers that did a lot to change the scope of C++. We also had P0063. Hans is over there. By rebasing on C11 for C++ 17, that little sentence that we added saying that gets is no longer part of the standard, it goes too. So this is what we look like coming out of Ulu. We added a few more sections, a lot more wording, NXD's bigger. In Alistair's presentation, he actually said that from C++ 14 to the current committee draft, we've actually added no pages to NXD, even though we've made these changes to the annex. All right, so future. In 4190, Stefan made the comment that, hey, maybe we should get rid of bind. There have been other comments saying we've got these things called lambdas. Scott Myers has talked about we don't need bind. In reality, there's probably a lot more usage of bind than a lot of the other things that we've talked about here today. In fact, in Alistair's presentation, rather than using a polymorphic lambda, he actually used bind. So that one's probably would not go without some fight. Thank you. Code convert. Anybody using code convert? Oh, wow. You're like using everything from the standard, evidently. Okay. Yeah. Do you have any problems with code convert? It works well on Windows? Not that well on Windows. There's some problems with the specification of code convert. You might see some comments saying that it shouldn't be included in the standard. P0408. It's a paper that it's up. Richard, is it up on WG21's open standard site? I don't know. Look for 408. It looks at doing move semantics with stream buffers. And it's been noticed that if we have that, we might go a long ways to actually removing stir stream at that point. So something to look forward to. P003. We really tried to get this into C++17. And this might actually be the deprecation of the exception specifications for C++11 might actually be the basis for that sentence earlier in this presentation about exceptions being deprecated. We've got no except. There really isn't a need for this anymore. It would have been nice to get it into C++17. Richard's telling me that 408 is up on the website, so that you can look at that. All right. The other things from 174. Vector bool. Vector bool. Everyone likes to use vector bool as the problem child of the standard. As you can see, we tried to get rid of it once before. That didn't succeed. Some future, maybe, maybe not. Algorithms with half ranges. That certainly is one that would go well with ranges v2. There wouldn't be an actual need for those other than to allow previous code to continue to compile. And we'd have safer code. You wouldn't have a begin and end, a begin and copy off the end. So that would be nice to get rid of. Value compare, not even going to say anything about it. So some of the other talks from this week, I mentioned Alistair. Patrice had one on the current exception situation. SG14 has been quite concerned as far as from the gaming and low latency as far as the impact of exceptions and how their code runs. I mentioned Walter. If you happen to see Jason Turner's recent CPP Weekly episode 26, he talked about, I believe, 3 of the features that were in this talk and has some actual code in the 7-minute little talk. And You Should Name It actually followed up on their original post and said, all right, yeah, we are doing things with the standard. Lots of things are coming and going. And that is the end of this very quick talk so that I don't overrun into the next talk. Thank you. Questions? I have one over here. And we'll get to JF. Yes, 2 questions.
First one, how do you measure the usage of each feature? And next one, what steps do you do to notify the community besides publishing those features?
So question number 1 was, how do we measure usage? Talk to Titus Winter from Google. He does a lot of data mining on code bases to know where we're actually using things. There is another repository of keywords from lots of open source projects that have been looked at in the past to know about usage. And your second question was, how do we notify the community? Papers get posted to isocpp.org. Books get written. I don't think there's really, a mass mailing to the community. Reddit posts. Bryce Lebach has certainly posted as we've completed plenary sessions for committee meetings saying this is what we've been doing, and on and on and on, I can imagine. Does that answer all your questions? All right. Jeff.
Can we get rid of ISO 646 and everything?
So JF wants to get rid of ISO 6446, 646, and I guess I would say, have you written a paper? Would I vote for it? You know someone that won't. ISO 646, where we have and or and XOR. So the header has no keywords. So now they're tokens. We should just delete them. Go for it. Okay. Any other questions? Yes, John. Yes. So the question was, in talking about vector bool, are we talking about deprecation of the specialization? And my answer was yes. And then your follow-up was, is everything just going to get larger? I have a feeling that vector bool is going to stick around. We've been talking about the problem being proxy iterators, and we've been trying to fix the problem with proxy iterators. So it might stay. Yeah. Other questions? No more questions? Hopefully for whatever next talk I give, I won't be running to it. We are at 22 minutes, so our next speaker. All right. Thank you, everyone, and enjoy the conference.